The flowers arrived before she did. That was the detail Madeleine remembered most, years later, when people asked her how it all started. Not the vows she never got to finish, not the sound of the church doors swinging open, not even the look on Bryce's face when she walked in on him in the vestibule, his hands buried in Courtney's hair, both of them too distracted to notice the bride standing 6 feet away in 40 pounds of ivory silk. No. What she remembered first was the flowers, white peonies and blush ranunculus, stuffed into mason jars along every pew. She had spent 3 weekends driving to 3 different farms outside Charleston to source them herself, because the florist wanted $1,100 for something rustic modern, and Madeleine had exactly $1,142 in her personal checking account at the time. She had done the math 3 times. She always did the math. She was good at numbers. Had been since she was 9 years old, sitting at the kitchen table in her mother's apartment in Beaufort, South Carolina, tallying up grocery receipts while her mother slept off a double shift. Numbers made sense. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers didn't look you in the eye and tell you that you were the one they wanted, that you were different, that they had never felt this way about anyone before. Numbers didn't do what Bryce Whitfield did on the morning of June 14th, in the vestibule of St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, with the maid of honor's lipstick on his collar and his hands in places they had no business being 20 minutes before he was supposed to marry someone else. Madeleine stood in the doorway for 4 seconds. She counted. She always counted. Then she turned around. She didn't cry, not in the vestibule, not in the parking lot, where she sat in her car with her veil crooked and her bouquet in her lap and her phone blinking with 17 unread texts from her mother-in-law-to-be asking where she was. Not when she peeled off her left glove and looked at the engagement ring Bryce had given her, a modest half-carat that she had told everyone was elegant, because it was the word she used when she meant small and didn't want anyone to feel sorry for her. She did not cry. She set the ring on the passenger seat very carefully, as though it might still mean something to someone. Then she drove. She didn't know where she was going. That was the honest truth of it, and Madeleine had always prided herself on honesty, even when it was inconvenient, even when the truth was that she had no plan, no money, no family in this city, no apartment that wasn't technically also Bryce's apartment, no job that wasn't technically the accounting position at Bryce's father's real estate firm that she had taken because it seemed like the sensible thing to do when you were marrying into a family and trying to prove you belonged there. She had spent 2 years proving she belonged there. She drove until the city thinned out and the road got darker, and she realized she was on the wrong side of the Ravenel Bridge with an empty gas tank and a wedding dress and no plan whatsoever. That was when the tire blew. She pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, turned off the engine, and sat there in the sudden quiet. Outside, the marsh stretched out on both sides of the road, flat and grey and indifferent. A heron stood in the water 30 feet away, absolutely still, watching her the way herons watch things, as though they've seen worse and will see worse again and nothing surprises them anymore. She thought, I have $42 in cash, a dead cell phone, and a wedding dress with a 6-foot train. This is my life. She did not laugh, but it was close. She was still sitting there when the black SUV pulled up behind her. Not the aggressive pull-up of someone impatient, but the slow, deliberate deceleration of someone who had already decided what they were going to do before they did it. The door opened. A man got out. He was not what she expected. She didn't know exactly what she expected. Some passing Good Samaritan, probably. Someone in a polo shirt with a roadside assistance app on his phone. What she got was a man in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car, unhurried, standing on the gravel shoulder at dusk like he had nowhere better to be. He was tall, late 30s, maybe early 40s. Dark hair threaded through with grey at the temples. The kind of face that had been handsome once and had since become something more complicated, not uglier, exactly, just harder. A jaw that looked like it had been set against something difficult a long time ago and never fully relaxed. He looked at her through the passenger window. She looked back at him. Flat tire, she said, because she didn't know what else to say. I can see that, he said. His voice was low and unhurried, the kind of voice that didn't need to raise itself to be heard. Are you all right? It was such a normal question. Such a completely ordinary question to ask a woman sitting on a gravel shoulder in a wedding dress at dusk with a flat tire and a ring on her passenger seat. Madeleine almost said yes out of pure reflex. The way she always said yes. The way she had always been saying yes to every person who asked her that question for 28 years. Because saying no required an explanation and explanations required trust, and trust was something Madeleine had learned to parcel out in very small amounts. But she was tired. She was so tired. I've had better days, she said. Something shifted in his expression. It wasn't quite sympathy. It was something quieter than that, more considered. He looked at the ring on the passenger seat. He looked at the bouquet in her lap. He looked back at her face. He didn't say, I'm sorry. She noted that. Most people said I'm sorry when they didn't know what else to say. This man didn't. I have a spare, he said. If you want it. She did. His name, she learned while he changed her tire in the gathering dark, was Voss, just Voss. He offered it the way some men offer a business card, last name only, no explanation, as though first names were currency he didn't hand out to strangers. He had 2 men with him who stayed by the SUV and said nothing. She noticed they were watching the road in both directions. She noticed they weren't doing it casually. She noticed a lot of things. She always did. You live out here? She asked. No, he said. Just passing through. Something like that. She watched him work. He was efficient. No wasted motion. No asking her to hold things for him. No performing for her benefit. He simply did what needed to be done. She found to her mild surprise that she trusted him more for it. You're not going to ask, she said. He looked up at her. Ask what? About the dress. About the ring. She gestured vaguely at herself. About all of this, he went back to the tire. It's not my business. Most people would ask. I'm not most people. She believed him. He finished and stood and brushed gravel dust off his hands with a white cloth that one of his men produced from somewhere without being asked. He looked at her for a moment with those grey, calculating eyes, the kind of eyes that seemed to be adding things up the way she added things up, running the numbers, checking the columns. Where are you going? He asked. I don't know yet. He nodded slowly, as though that was a reasonable answer, as though he respected it even. There's a diner 3 miles east, he said. Open till midnight. The coffee is bad, but the pie is not. He got back in his SUV and drove away. She sat there for another 30 seconds. Then she drove east. The diner was called Patsy's. It was exactly as described. Fluorescent lighting, sticky menus, coffee that tasted like it had been brewed sometime around the previous administration. But the coconut cream pie was, in fact, extraordinary, and the waitress, a woman named June with reading glasses pushed up into silver hair, did not comment on the wedding dress. She just poured Madeleine's coffee, set down the pie, and said, Rude, hon, in the particular way of Southern women who already know the answer and are simply offering you permission to admit it. Yeah, Madeleine said. Rough day. She had been sitting there for 40 minutes, working through a second slice of pie and trying to figure out the math of her immediate future. $42 cash, dead phone, no apartment, no job as of tomorrow when she didn't show up to work. No explanation she wanted to give to anyone who was currently blowing up her phone. When the door opened and Voss walked in, he stopped when he saw her. Not dramatically, just the slight pause of a man recalibrating. Then he walked to the counter, 3 stools down from her, and ordered coffee. You came back, she said. I eat here sometimes. She looked at him. You said the coffee was bad. It is. He picked up the mug. I didn't say I had good taste. June appeared and refilled Madeleine's cup without being asked. She looked between the two of them with the benign, expert interest of a woman who had seen every variety of human situation walk through her door and found all of them more or less acceptable. You want pie, sweetheart? She asked Voss. No, thank you, June. You never want pie, June said, the way someone says something they've said many times before, and went back to her station. So he did come here, often enough that June knew him, often enough to warrant a no thank you to pie ritual. Madeleine filed this away. I need to ask you something, she said. All right. You're not a regular businessman, are you? It wasn't quite a question. He looked at her sideways over his coffee mug, and again there was that subtle recalibration, that slight narrowing of consideration. What makes you say that? The men with you, the way they watched the road, the fact that you're out here at dusk on a road that doesn't go to anything important. She picked up her fork. And the way you looked at the ring on my seat, not curious, assessing, like you were pricing it. A long pause. You're observant, he said. I'm an accountant, former accountant, from the look of things. She almost smiled at that. She didn't quite. Former is correct. He set down his mug. He looked at her in that straight line, no performance way of his, and she felt, not for the first time that evening, that this man was genuinely seeing her. Not the dress, not the disaster, not the story she came with. Just her. My name is Roman Voss, he said. I run certain operations in this part of the state, the kind that don't involve business licenses. She let that settle. Okay, she said. He blinked. The first time she had seen him surprised. Okay, I'm not going to pretend I don't know what that means, she said. I'm not an idiot, and I'm not in a position to be particular tonight. She looked down at her pie. I appreciate the spare tire and the pie recommendation, and the honesty. Most people don't bother. He was quiet for a moment. Your wedding, he said. What happened? She had not planned to tell him. She told him anyway. Not the whole thing, not all at once, but the essential shape of it. 2 years building something she thought was real. A man she had trusted past the point of sense. A maid of honor and a vestibule and the specific quality of silence that settles over you when you see something you cannot unsee. She told it flatly, the way she would tell a stranger on a plane. No melodrama, just the facts in order. She was good at just the facts in order. When she finished, Voss was looking at the counter. He work for his family, he asked. His father's firm. I worked there too, so you've lost the job and the apartment, and the fiancé, and the savings because I spent them on the wedding. She pushed a crumb around her plate. I'm very good at math and I made a lot of bad calculations. He looked at her. I need someone, he said. She went still. I have 3 properties, 2 holding companies, and a distribution network that runs across 4 counties, he said. My current bookkeeper is in the hospital. He'll be there for some time. I need someone who can read numbers without flinching, keep their mouth shut, and not ask questions they don't need the answers to. She stared at him. You're offering me a job, she said. I'm offering you a roof and a salary, he said. The work is real, the accounting is real. The rest is. He paused, and she had the sense he was choosing his word carefully. Complicated. Define complicated. You'd be living on the property, for your own safety, and for the security of the operation. The arrangement would need to appear, to certain people, to be something other than what it is. The word appear hung in the air between them. You need a cover, she said slowly. I need the books managed. The cover is incidental. She looked at him for a long time. She thought about the math. $42. No apartment. No job. No one in Charleston she could call without explaining everything, and explaining everything meant Bryce's mother, and Bryce's father, and the whole web of judgment she had been fending off, since the day she showed up at their first dinner in a dress from Target, and smiled like she belonged there. She thought about the heron in the marsh. Absolutely still, watching. How long? She said. Undetermined. Until my bookkeeper recovers, or until we have a reason to end it. What happens at the end? You leave, with 6 months' salary and no questions asked on either side. She looked at the ring she'd placed in the pocket of her dress sometime around pie number 2. She thought about Bryce's hands in Courtney's hair. She thought about white peonies in mason jars. She thought about how long she'd been making small, careful calculations to survive in other people's worlds, and what it might feel like, just once, to make a big reckless one in her own. I need a new phone, she said, and something that isn't a wedding dress, that can be arranged. And I look at the books before I agree, all of them. I need to see what I'm actually walking into. He didn't hesitate. Fine. She put out her hand. He looked at it for a moment, not reluctantly, just with that same slow deliberation he brought to everything, and then he shook it. His hand was warm, and his grip was firm, and there was a scar along the outside edge of his right palm that she didn't ask about. She would later learn it was from a knife. She would later learn a lot of things. But that night, in a diner called Patsy's with bad coffee and extraordinary pie, what she knew was this. She had $42 and a dress that didn't fit her life anymore, and a man with grey eyes and an illegal empire was offering her the closest thing to solid ground she'd been standing on in 2 years. The numbers didn't look great, but the alternative looked worse. The property was 20 minutes outside the city. She expected something ostentatious, that kind of compound people built when they had money and no one to tell them no. What she got was a house that looked almost ordinary from the outside. Wide porch, old oak trees, a gravel driveway that needed regrading. It was the inside that told the truth. Quiet, spare, expensive in the way that whispers rather than shouts. The furniture chosen for permanence rather than impression. The art on the walls selected by someone with an eye and no interest in showing off. There were 6 other people in the house at various hours. None of them asked her questions. She got the sense this was a rule. The room they gave her was at the end of a long hallway, with a window that faced east and curtains the color of old linen. On the bed was a change of clothes. Plain, her size, how he knew she had no idea, and a new phone, box still sealed, sitting on the nightstand like a small white offering. She plugged it in, she didn't turn it on until morning. She wasn't ready for the world she'd left to come back in through the screen. She slept better than she had in 6 months. The books were a disaster, not dishonest, or not intentionally, anyway. Just chaotic. The way things get chaotic when someone capable is suddenly not there and everyone else makes do. 3 ledgers maintained in overlapping systems. 2 holding companies that reported to each other in ways that would not survive even casual scrutiny. A distribution log that had been kept in someone's personal shorthand that Madeleine spent the better part of Tuesday morning decoding like a puzzle. She decoded it, then she rebuilt it. She was on her 4th cup of coffee and her 2nd legal pad of restructuring notes when Voss appeared in the doorway of the study. He looked at the papers spread across the desk. "Should I be concerned?" he said. "About the fact that someone named DC has apparently been running a parallel reimbursement system for the past 18 months that doesn't cross-reference with anything else in here," she said without looking up. "Yes, extremely." Silence. "No one noticed," he said. It wasn't quite a question. No one was looking in the right place. She finally looked up at him. "Do you want me to fix it, or do you want me to tell you how bad it is first?" "Both," he said. "In that order," she told him. He listened the way she was starting to understand. He did everything, completely still, no interruption, processing. When she finished, he asked 3 questions, precise and in the right order, and she answered them. Then he said, "How long to fix it fully?" 2 weeks if no one gets in my way. 3 if they do. No one will get in your way." She believed him. That was still surprising to her, how often she found herself believing him. She'd spent years learning not to take people at face value. Voss said things she could verify in the doing of them, and so far, everything had verified. The days settled into something she hadn't expected. Routine. She worked. She ate meals in the kitchen with whoever else happened to be there. A quiet man named Aldrich who did something she didn't ask about. A woman in her 50s called Price who ran the property and had the dry, unshockable manner of someone who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. And she worked more. She went to bed when the numbers stopped making sense and got up when they started again. Voss was there, and then he wasn't, and then he was again. He traveled. He had, she gathered, a great many things demanding his presence in a great many places, most of which she didn't ask about. But when he was in the house, he had a habit of stopping by the study in the evenings. Not to check on her, or not only that, he would bring coffee. The good kind, from a machine in the kitchen that she was embarrassed to admit she'd been afraid to touch, and set it on the corner of the desk without being asked. And sometimes he would stand in the doorway, and sometimes he would sit in the other chair, and they would talk about the books, or about nothing in particular, and Madeleine found herself thinking that she had not talked to someone like this in a long time. like two people who were both too tired for pretending. One night, she asked him how he'd gotten into it. Into all of it. He was quiet for a long time. She'd learned not to fill his silences. "My father ran the operation," he said. "I took it over when I was 26. Did you want to?" "No. But you stayed." The alternative was worse. He looked at her. "Sound familiar?" She thought about $42 and a flat tire and a coconut cream pie. "A little," she said. He almost smiled. She was getting better at seeing the almost smiles. They were small, the slight relaxation of something held tight, and they were not nothing. She did not think about Bryce very much. That surprised her. She had expected the heartbreak to be louder, more persistent, the kind of thing that ran underneath everything like a bad note in a song. Instead, it had mostly just receded, like something that had never quite fit the shape of her, and now that it was gone, she could feel the relief of the empty space. What she thought about, more than she meant to, was the fact that in 2 weeks she had learned more about who she actually was than she had learned in the 2 years prior. She was good at this work. Genuinely good. Not just competent. She had always been competent, but good in the way that meant she loved it. The untangling, the reconstructing, the satisfaction of making a complicated thing finally make sense. She had not done work she loved since before she met Bryce and started shape-shifting to fit inside his life. That was worth knowing. It was uncomfortable to know, but it was worth it. 3 weeks in, someone from her old life found her. It was Courtney, which surprised her. She'd expected Bryce. She had not expected Courtney to show up at the diner. June's diner, which Madeleine had been using as a neutral territory and meeting point for anything that required leaving the property, with her sunglasses on indoors and her hands wrapped around a coffee mug like she was using it for warmth. Madeleine sat down across from her. "How did you find me?" she said. "Your mum." She got worried. "I told her I'd." Courtney stopped. "Put the mug down. I wanted to say I was sorry." Madeleine looked at her. This girl she had called her best friend for 4 years. Who had been the first person she told when Bryce proposed. Who had stood next to her through 3 dress fittings and 2 venue visits and 1 meltdown about centerpieces that Madeleine would now like to have back. "Okay," Madeleine said. "That's it? Okay? What else is there to say? I don't know." Courtney looked small, which she wasn't, and young, which she was. 26. The same age Madeleine had been when she met Bryce. "I thought you'd be angrier," Madeleine said. "I had some time to think about it." She wrapped her hands around her own mug. "Was it just the once, or was it?" The look on Courtney's face answered it. "Right," Madeleine said. She thought about what she wanted to feel. She went looking for the anger and found it there, still but quieter than she expected, like a fire that had mostly burned down to coals. What was underneath it was something more complicated, something that looked, if she was being honest, a lot like relief. "Is he why you stayed in it?" she asked. "Or were you in it first, and he was?" "I don't know," Courtney said, and she sounded like she meant it. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know that's not something I get to ask for." "No," Madeleine agreed. "It's not." She left Courtney in the diner and drove back to the property in the early afternoon light, and she sat in the car for a few minutes before going inside, looking at the old oak trees and the porch and the gravel that still needed regrading. She did not feel like a woman who had been betrayed. She felt strangely like a woman who had been released. It was Voss who noticed something had shifted. He didn't ask about it directly. That wasn't his way. But that evening he brought coffee and sat in the chair instead of the doorway and said, after a long, comfortable silence, "You look different. Different how? Lighter." He considered the word. "Like you put something down." She thought about how to say it. "I went and looked at the old thing today," she said. "The situation I came from. I thought it would open it back up, make it worse. Did it?" "No." She looked at the ledger in front of her. "I think I was mostly angry about the waste. The time. I was so careful with the numbers and so careless with everything else." He was quiet for a moment. "Careful with the numbers," he repeated. "I mean, I was precise about the things I thought I could control, and I just trusted the things I couldn't, without checking them." She shook her head. "That's not how I actually think. I don't know why I did it. Because you wanted something, he said. People let themselves be imprecise when they want something badly enough. She looked at him. Is that personal experience? He met her eyes. Yes. It was the most he had ever said about himself in that register. The one that wasn't logistics, wasn't business, wasn't the flat, efficient language of operations. Just that one word. Yes. She felt its weight. She didn't push. She let it sit. But something shifted between them that evening. Not dramatically, not announced, just a slight recalibration of the distance they'd each been keeping. She had stopped counting how many days had passed. She had stopped thinking of the arrangement as temporary, in the way you think of a hotel as temporary, a thing between where you were and where you're going. She had started thinking of it as simply where she was, and she wasn't sure when that had happened. She wasn't sure what to do with that, except file it carefully and come back to it. The problem arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of a man named Aldrich telling her, with the neutral expression of someone delivering weather reports, that there were people asking questions in the city about the holding companies. Not law enforcement, the other kind. The kind that asked questions with a specific purpose. She was in the study with the second ledger when Voss came in. She could tell from the way he stood that it was serious. He had a particular posture for serious, not tense, just settled, like a man who has stepped from movement into stillness and is deciding what comes next. You heard, she said. Yes. Do you need me to do anything, she said. With the books. Move anything, restructure. No. He looked at her. I need you to be careful. For the next few days, she set down her pen. Is this the part where I find out exactly how complicated is? Possibly. She had known abstractly what kind of world she had walked into. She was not naive. She had been doing the books for 3 weeks, and she understood enough of the shorthand now to know the shape of things. She had made her peace with it, or thought she had, in the intellectual way you make peace with things when they're not yet in front of you. Now it was in front of her. She thought about what she wanted to do, which was leave. Run the numbers on exit. $42 had become 6 weeks of salary. She had a phone and a car and somewhere to go. She thought about the books on the desk in front of her, half reconstructed, which would take another week to finish. She thought about what happened to a half reconstructed ledger in the hands of someone who didn't know what they were looking at. She thought about Voss in the doorway with coffee at 9 o'clock at night. She thought about the almost smiles. She thought about what he had said. People let themselves be imprecise when they want something badly enough. She was being imprecise right now. She knew it. She was adding things into the column that didn't belong in a rational calculation. She added them anyway. Tell me what to do, she said. He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved in his face, the particular movement of someone who had not expected that answer, and was, very privately, grateful for it. Stay inside for the next 48 hours, he said. Don't contact anyone you knew before you came here. And trust me, she thought. I don't trust easily, she thought. I have been trusting you for 3 weeks without meaning to. All right, she said. But Voss, he looked at her. When this is over, she said, I want the rest of the truth, about the arrangement, about what this is. She held his gaze. I'm not asking you to put it in a contract. I'm asking you to be honest with me, the way I've been honest with you. A long silence. The house was very quiet around them. Yes, he said. Just that. The same weight as before. The same one word. She nodded. She picked up her pen. Then go handle it, she said. I have a ledger to finish. He almost smiled. She saw it clearly this time. Clearer than all the others. Not small at all, not almost. Just a real thing crossing his face briefly before he pulled it back. Like something he'd forgotten he was allowed, he left. The house settled around her. The oak trees outside moved in the evening wind, slow and old and unhurried. Madeleine looked down at the numbers on the page. She was good at math, and she had made a lot of bad calculations. But for the first time in longer than she could measure, she looked at the figures in front of her and felt, with complete and uncharacteristic certainty, that she had put the right numbers in the right column. She bent her head and got back to work.